take a one. Cool. Wow. That's a soldier. Would Ozzy Kreisek please join us on stage?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ozzy Krizik, and I am here to introduce our next retiree, my mom, Lieutenant Colonel Erin Kraken Krizik. Since I can remember, and much longer than that, my mom has been in the Air Force. In my world, that meant long days I wouldn't see her, early morning goodbyes, and late night returns. At times, she'd be gone so long, she'd accidentally miss something important to our family for the sake of her job. I always understood that what she was doing was important, but I'd always found it unfair to me since I could never see her as often as I wanted to. Nowadays, I can recognize that what she did really mattered, and I hadn't been easy for her either. She had given everything she had for 20 years, and I can still see that she does. Growing up with someone who flew planes was pretty fun. I learned a little about the drones she flew, the teams she led, and the missions all over the world. She'd help build programs, guide operations, and make sure everything was running smoothly, especially in tense situations. But truth be told, that's not the part of her I vividly remember. I remember her professionalism and teamwork abilities and how often she was delighted to work with her buddies in the Air Force. I could never recall a time where she didn't have a silly story to tell me about her day or during deployment, and even the day I finally figured out why her call sign is Kraken. As someone who has taken leadership positions for myself, my mom is who I really look up to when faced with a situation. She didn't believe that a good leader had to be the loudest or the most dominant. It was about listening. It was about doing the hard work with determination and standing up for your teammates. She cared so deeply about her airmen, her teammates, her mission, and that sentiment carried over to our family too. Her job was no walk in the park either. She was faced with constant challenges, long days, and sacrifices her family had to make. Honestly, she had every right to come home and grouch around the house, but she always came home with a smile on her face. She was a shining star of commitment, integrity, and service. She showed me that strength could be quiet, compassion can be powerful, and a true leader would put others first. Today, my mom celebrates over 20 years of service. I don't have the words to describe how proud I am of her as a friend and a daughter. In body, mind, and soul, I would never think to have her any other way. The Air Force had shaped her, but she also made it better by being a part of it. Mom, thank you for serving our country, for leading with heart and spirit, and showing me how the long hours can still be fun. I love you so much, and I'm grateful to be your daughter.
Good job, Mom. I'd ask you to please rise. I guess you've done that for the presentation of the Meritorious Service Medal to Lieutenant Colonel Erin Kreisek. To all who shall see these presents greetings. This is to certify that the President of the United States of America, authorized by Executive Order 16 January 1969, has awarded the Meritorious Service Medal, 1st Oak Leaf Cluster, to Lieutenant Colonel Erin S. Kreisek for meritorious service from 2 June 2022 to 30 November 2025. Lieutenant Colonel Erin S. Kreisek distinguished herself in the performance of outstanding service to the United States as the Deputy Director of Wing Operations A3, 472nd Electronic Combat Squadron, 319th Operations Group, 319th Reconnaissance Wing, Robins Air Force Base, Georgia, from 2 June 2022 to 30 November 2025. During this period, Colonel Krizik's leadership was instrumental in coordinating the Air Combat Command and E-11A and RQ-4 program staff to facilitate operations for 2 weapon systems valued at a combined $5 billion. In addition, as Assistant Director of Operations, she supervised and guided 3 Air Force civilians driving readiness, budget, and essential staff functions. Furthermore, as Acting Deputy Operations Group Commander, Colonel Krizik coordinated E-11A exercise participation to ensure aircrew training and sortie production met higher headquarters objectives. Finally, her coordination was vital in generating 272 Squadron E-11A training sorties and producing 28 fully mission-qualified deployers for Central Command, enabling 1,500 combat sorties, 7,300 combat hours, and 370 precision strikes. The singularly distinctive accomplishment of Lieutenant Colonel Krizik's culminate a distinguished career in service of her country and reflect great credit upon herself and the United States Air Force. By order of the Secretary of the Air Force, Lieutenant Colonel Aaron Krizik stands retired as of 1 December 2025. Please be seated. Aaron, the floor is yours.
Goodness, so many names being cut up here. Thank you, Ozzy. I also want to start by saying thank you to everyone in attendance today, Representative General Jeff. This is incredible to get to experience my retirement like this, so thank you for making it so much better than it was. And thank you for everyone attending here today, and to the Air Force that has been my home for more than 20 years. Standing here now is not how I imagined my efforts protecting this country would play out and end, but I am proud to do so with 4 other exceptional Americans that I only truly met in person today, 4 that I have worked with, have struggled with, and who I would proudly give my life to protect. We 5, and many among you today, have all taken an oath to our Constitution. We have sworn to protect this country from all enemies, and we have made it a lifelong promise without any mental reservation, because we are dedicated to those ideals that our nation was founded upon. Over my career, I've been called a hero and thanked for my service, presented with awards for exceptional achievement and honor and sacrifice and vigilance. The late nights and the early mornings that Ozzy talked about, I did all those things and I was given credit for, recognized for, and made to endure presentation ceremonies for. I did that for the hope that I was making this country a better place for my 3 children, and for your children and your families and your hopes as well. We all wanted to leave our service better than we found it, to leave something our kids would be proud to take up and make better themselves, a legacy of proud, authentic service. Now I have been separated from the Air Force not because my performance, commitment, or ideals have been found lacking, but because the policy changed on who could serve. And that reality is difficult to say out loud. I've never failed any Air Force test for fitness, for academics, for flight evaluation, or for my leadership ability. This change is difficult because it doesn't erase what came before, but it changed how this chapter of my life closes. But what I want to be very clear about is this: my service was real. My dedication was real, and the years I gave to this country were given fully, honorably, and especially at the end with great pride. Those that served alongside me, that are being brushed aside by recent policies, they are Americans that served and deserve recognition like all of us today. Transgender service members are persons of character, not caricatures. And a society that justifies exclusion by denying our humanity needs to learn its lesson better from the civil rights movement. The whole category of people are reduced to abstraction. There often follows a very real threat of violence to the same. And it's only through sheer luck and timing that I stand here today to represent so many in my service that are not visible to you in the way I am right now. But I read their voices, and I see their frustrations, and I recognize many airmen were promised early retirement, only to see that policy reversed after their decisions were made and promises given. I hope my brothers and sisters find justice in this, where in my humble opinion it feels warranted. I also represent those airmen that have held the same values I did, often with little recognition and generally at great personal cost. They are separating from being transgender like me, and it is my responsibility on this day to remind all those in attendance that their service mattered too. You are surrounded daily by so many transgender airmen and fellow Americans who serve our country quietly and professionally, many of whom are not here today or in uniform because being seen now carries risk. To me, their choices do not reflect a lack of courage. They are the result of prioritizing safety, family, or survival in a moment that could easily demand too much of them. And for that reason, to my friends and family that are here and to those listening that know who they are, I will say simply that I see you, I know you, and I love you. As for seeing me today, I cannot say how you see me. My eyes like me daily. I'm a proud mother who lived the Air Force core values the same way I try to live everything else, with integrity, compassion, and a belief that our people and all their diversity are the mission. We were always stronger because we were united as one people and one force. Before I depart, allow me a minute to mention a little bit about what I've done in my time. In 2014, I led the RQ-4 Global Hawk and NORAD Northcom's Airspace Joint Integration Test and flew the first unmanned aircraft at altitude within the national airspace outside of a restricted area. I got a coin for that. And I was so excited to get to do it. I was the first pilot to command an RQ-4 Block 40 when it deployed to CENTCOM. As a major, I was the senior national representative and ranking U.S. officer for 18 months during the stand-up of NATO's Alliance Ground Surveillance Force in Italy, and the first evaluator pilot in that same system. I led Air Combat Command's operational divestiture of the RQ-4 Block 20s and 30s, then moved to Georgia and helped fly, and then divest the JSTARS as well, while being initial cadre to the E-11 Bacon mission that recently formed there. Oh, and I just happened to also be the first Air Force pilot returned to active flying status in May 2024 after stabilizing on hormone replacement therapy. I was set to deploy with E-11 just 6 months or so later. Didn't feel my readiness. These uniforms, my uniform, it has shaped me. It taught me how to do these things through discipline, commitment, and humility. It gave me a 60,000-foot worldview of the world and a deep appreciation for the quiet strength of those who serve without expecting applause. While my time in uniform has ended, my commitment to service does not. I leave the Air Force proud of the missions I accomplished, proud of the people I stood beside, and proud to say that I served honestly, even when honesty was hard and cost me dearly. To the airmen still serving, especially those who feel unseen, you matter. Your service matters, and you are not alone. Thank you for allowing me the privilege of appearing before you today. I will always be an airman and hold true to my oath, because the uniform may come off, but the values it represents never will. Thank you.
Would Leanne Riley please join us on stage?
To my Coast Guard friends as a Navy folk, this is one of those times where it actually isn't so bad to get to go first. To have to follow such a distinguished group here is an incredible honor. And it is a true honor and privilege to stand before you today and have the opportunity to honor Commander Blake Drayman, whose retirement after 20 years of service both ends an incredible career and is the beginning of a new chapter, which I know is going to be very exciting. If you have never met Blake, you may not realize he is one of the most remarkable yet unassuming people in this room. His quiet humility contrasts sharply with the immense impact he has had throughout his career.
Battling hate and building better systems is far from over, and I still have more to give. As I step out of uniform, this isn't an ending so much as a continuation. The values that guided my service, steadiness, curiosity, and a care for the people beside me, were never tied to that uniform. They carry me forward to the next chapter. I leave grateful for the people that I've served with, the proud work we did together, and the confident that the work, often mischievous, occasionally audacious, and always human, will continue long after today. Thank you.
Thank you, Blake. Would Aaron Carver please join us on stage?
Good afternoon. When the United States was attacked on September 11th, 2001, Bree answered the call, commissioning into the Air Force and swearing to protect and defend the Constitution, and to uphold the Air Force's core values: integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do. For the next 16 years, until the stand-up of the United States Space Force, Bree did just that. Lieutenant Fram's first assignment was at the Air Force Research Laboratory, where she worked on spacecraft mechanisms. During this assignment, she deployed in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom, serving as a sensor specialist and airspace coordinator for the Horned Owl, a C-12 aircraft that was modified to detect IEDs. Lieutenant Fram planned over 300 Horned Owl missions and saved the lives of countless American and coalition forces. Her work to reduce the cost of spacecraft launch and to protect the American forces in Iraq earned her a rank of #1 of 26 lieutenants at AFRL when she departed. After completing a master's in astronautical engineering at the Air Force Institute of Technology, Bree promoted to captain and was assigned to the Space and Missile Systems Center, the first place we worked together. She worked on space-based infrared systems, or SIBRs, a constellation of satellites that provide missile warning capabilities in defense of our homeland. She graduated from Squadron Officer School as a distinguished graduate, top 10% of her class, and was selected to work on the staff of the 3-star commander, providing fiscal and technical insight into the $1 billion SIBRs portfolio. When she departed SMC, Captain Fram was ranked as the #2 of 437 captains at SMC. For her next assignment, Captain Fram went to the National Reconnaissance Office's operational unit in Colorado. There she managed operations and maintenance efforts, ensuring that our critical national intelligence systems were available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In her first year, Bree was ranked as the #1 of 172 Air Force captains across the NRO. The following year, she was promoted to major, and when she departed that assignment, she was in the top 5% of majors across the organization. Major Fram was selected for the prestigious Capitol Hill Legislative Fellowship Program, serving on the staff of the ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee Readiness Subcommittee. As a follow-on assignment, she went to the Pentagon to work on strategic planning for the Air Force budget, and the quality of her work earned her the position of executive officer to the 2-star director and a rank of #1 of 12 majors in that organization. She moved to international affairs and was the Iraq country director, managing foreign military sales cases worth over $13 billion. Bree pinned on Lieutenant Colonel and was ranked number 2 of 34 field grade officers in that unit. In June 2018, Lieutenant Colonel Fram returned to AFRL for her material leader assignment, managing a $940 million portfolio executed by a team of 220 military, civilians, and contractors. One of her responsibilities was to lead the transition of a counter-small unmanned aerial system from tech development into operations. Under her leadership, that system was fielded to defend a Navy hospital ship that supported American civilian hospitals during the COVID pandemic. For their work to operationalize the counter-UAS system, Lieutenant Colonel Fram's team was recognized as AFRL's Team of the Year. A recognition, she tells me, is one of the most proud moments of her career. At the end of her assignment, Lieutenant Colonel Fram was ranked number 1 of 69 lieutenant colonels in the organization. As Lieutenant Colonel Fram was wrapping up her ML tour, the Space Force stood up and she became a guardian, committed to upholding the new service's values: character, connection, commitment, and courage. No surprise given her record to date, Bree hit the ground running. She went to Naval War College that year and graduated again as a distinguished graduate in the top 10% of her class. Bree left Newport to return to the Pentagon, first working on the stands of the new Space Acquisition Staff function, our second time working together. She was tenacious, driving critical organizational and policy decisions, and was ranked number 1 of 19 lieutenant colonels in the organization. When she was selected for promotion to colonel, she earned a line number of 2 of 55. For her final assignment, Colonel Fram moved to Space Staff, where she was responsible for integrating joint space requirements for all of the services. In her performance report in May of 2025, her leadership noted that she was, and I quote, absolutely phenomenal, and recommended her for a command position. Colonel Fram's records are clear. In her 22 years of service, she upheld both Air Force and Space Force values, excelling in her work and earning opportunities for increased responsibility and leadership. But what her records don't tell you is what her leadership meant to her teammates. So I'll leave you with these words shared by a major on one of those teams. Quote, Colonel Fram leaves behind more than just accomplishments. She leaves a legacy of authenticity and resiliency. She showed those around her that it's possible to serve with excellence while staying true to who you are. And that example is one of the most meaningful contributions a leader can make. Her impact will continue well beyond her time in uniform, and I am so grateful and honored to have served alongside her. Ladies and gentlemen, Colonel Bree Fram.
We'll now present the Legion of Merit 1st Oak Leaf Cluster to Colonel Bree Fram. To all who shall see these presents, greetings. This is to certify that the President of the United States of America, authorized by Act of Congress, July 20th, 1942, has awarded the Legion of Merit 1st Oak Leaf Cluster to Colonel Bree B. Fram for exceptionally meritorious conduct in the performance of outstanding services from 1 July 2024 to 31 December 2025. Colonel Bree B. Fram distinguished herself by exceptionally meritorious conduct in the performance of outstanding service to the United States as Chief, Requirements Integration Division, Integration Directorate, Deputy Chief of Space Operation, Strategy, Plans, Programs, and Requirements, the Pentagon, Washington, District of Columbia, from 1 July 2024 to 31 December 2025. During this period, Colonel Fram led the creation of Space Force unique policy and process for developing capability requirements, including the publication of the first ever Space Force Guidance Memorandum on Operational Capability Requirements. Her efforts built the Space Force requirements process, pushed execution authorities to the field, and ensured the Deputy Chief of Space Operations had the appropriate oversight of the entire space portfolio. She remade the Air Force legacy process for requirements validation by cutting an oversight council and reducing the coordination timeline by months. Colonel Fram oversaw the development and submission of Space Force input to congressional reports that could lead to a fundamental reshaping of how the Department of Defense manages requirements and capability development. Bree also led the first ever Space Force Requirement Summit, bringing together component field commands and staff agencies to identify capability gaps and propose pathways to capability delivery. Additionally, she published an integrated space-based sensing and targeting capability delivery document that will ensure synchronized effects between the services and the intelligence community that close long-range kill change for combatant commands. Furthermore, she co-led the Joint Space Requirements Integration Cell, ensuring the Chief of Space Operations role as the Joint Space Integrator for the Armed Forces was aligned with the Joint Staff's authority to validate capability requirements. Finally, Bree built a digital requirements ecosystem to enable model-based systems, engineering across capability development, and the force design process. The singularly distinctive accomplishments of Colonel Fram culminate in a distinguished career in the service of her country and reflect great credit upon herself and the United States Space Force. By order of the Secretary of the Air Force, Colonel Bree Fram stands retired as of January 1st, 2026.
This afternoon is beautiful and absurd. We gathered to honor 5 decorated military careers at the very moment our country forced us out of the uniforms we were honored to wear. Retirement ceremonies are supposed to be about closure, about a job well done, a chapter gracefully ending, and often a promise to slow down and finally give our families the time they deserve. I wish I could give that speech. My wife and kids are more than do their flowers. They've moved, waited, worried, and held things together through deployment and extended TDYs, late nights, and the constant uncertainty of military life. They have sacrificed time and time again. And today, instead of promising them a quieter life, I'm about to ask them to sacrifice one more time, because my story and our story isn't finished. In October 2024, I sat down with my mom, who's here along with my dad today, at a picnic table on the coast of Maine. As we watched the waves roll in, the first thing she asked me was not, "How are you?" or "What's next?" She looked at me the way only a mother can and said, "What's your plan to flee?" At that moment, more than $200 million was being spent on presidential campaign ads, which told our country that people like those of us on this stage were a threat, that our very existence was something to fear. My mom wasn't talking about politics. She was thinking about history, our history. My great-grandfather Ludwig fought for Imperial Germany in World War I. He was a highly decorated hero, an Iron Cross first-class recipient. My great-grandmother Paula lost all but one of her brothers in that war. Their roots in Germany were deep. Ludwig believed his service would protect him, even as a Jew. When brown shirt thugs held him at gunpoint and tore through his hotel, he believed his uniform and his record would keep his family safe. It didn't. The illusion shattered when 2 people were found hanging from a pole on his block, both naked, one Jewish, one Christian, with a sign underneath that said, "This is what happens when you pollute the Aryan race." That was the moment it became undeniable. It was time to go. Thanks to a narrow window opened by the Berlin Olympics, Ludwig and Paula grabbed their young son, Fred, boarded a train to Paris in the middle of the night, and fled. The next day, the SS came to the hotel they had just departed to arrest them. They were among the lucky few Jewish refugees allowed into the United States. That's the story that was echoing in my mom's mind when she asked, "What's your plan to flee?" She was afraid that my faith in my uniform would blind me the way it had blinded Ludwig. That I would believe my medals, my rank, and my 23 years of service could somehow protect me, my trans kiddo, and my community, right up until the moment they didn't. In a sense, she was right to worry, but she was wrong about my answer. I didn't grow up expecting to wear a uniform at all. On one side of my family, I can trace American military service back to the Revolution and government service back to a member of Virginia's House of Burgesses in the 1650s. On the other sides, to refugees who arrived with nothing and gave everything when democracy needed them. My grandfather Paul, the child of immigrants and refugees from Ukraine and Latvia, served as an Army Signal Corps officer in World War II. Twice he found himself behind enemy lines. Twice he used courage and guile to convince German units to surrender, once holding several thousand prisoners of war with 20 of his own men for 2 days until the rest of the army arrived. My grandfather Fred, Ludwig's son, raised his right hand the moment he was old enough. He asked to be sent back to Europe because he knew the evil that needed to be stopped. He became the youngest first sergeant in the European theater, earned 2 Bronze Stars, and turned down a battlefield commission for valor so he could stay with his soldiers. I grew up believing they had finished the fight. Nazism was a relic. We had won the Cold War. A Pax Americana stretched out before us. I thought my job was to enjoy the freedom they had already secured. Thanks to Star Trek, I had a different kind of uniform in mind. One to help us find new frontiers in the stars. I wanted to be an aerospace engineer, maybe an astronaut. I graduated college in 2001, ready to launch into that future. Then, on September 11th, I woke up to falling towers and a Pentagon in flames. In an instant, I learned what so many generations before me had already known. Freedom is not self-sustaining. It is not inevitable. It requires people again and again who are willing to stand up and say, if not me, then who? After a long bureaucratic slog and more lost paperwork than I care to remember, I raised my right hand and swore the oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. At my commissioning, my grandfather Fred was there. He gave me my first salute. His smile was so big you could see it from orbit. His grandchild in the United States military uniform. That mattered to him in a way I still didn't fully understand. Afterwards, we went back to his hotel room. He handed me a box. I opened it and found one of his Bronze Stars mounted in a frame with a quote. Courage does not always roar. Sometimes it's the quiet voice at the end of a difficult day which says, I will do my best again tomorrow. There's photographic evidence that when he gave me this, I looked confused. I didn't yet grasp the honor or the wisdom he was handing me. I was also terrible at receiving gifts. I still am today. But the people in this room who have worn the uniform know exactly what that quote means. They know what it is to get knocked down and stand back up anyway. To attend the briefing, lead the patrol, mentor the airman or soldier the next day, no matter what happened the day before. They know what it is to be that quiet voice that says, I will do my best again tomorrow. And the transgender service members in this room know that better than most. If you are a trans service member or veteran, I'm going to ask you to do something that may feel uncomfortable. I'm going to ask you to stand for a moment. Please stand if you are a trans veteran or service member. Look around this room. These are people who deployed, commanded, innovated, fixed what was broken, and made the mission happen. People who met every standard we set and then raised it. People who came out, stayed in, and proved over and over that our readiness, our discipline, our character were assets to this institution, not threats. They have lived the story of doing their very best day after day in a system that keeps telling them they were the problem. They are not the problem. They are the proof the problem lies elsewhere. Thank you, each and every one of you who had the courage to don the uniform and do your very best every day. I cry that our military service ended this way, but I'm so damn proud that it happened, and of all of you, thank you. Please be seated. For me, and I know for many of us, it was the military itself that gave me the tools and courage to become the best version of myself. The discipline, the community, the sense of purpose. It all gave me the strength to come out, to transition, and to serve authentically. And when I did, something incredible happened. My performance improved. My teams thrived. My colleagues had my back. Nothing illustrates this better than my last meeting with the Joint Staff. Because the Space Force is so small, we often send someone 1 or 2 ranks below the other services to meetings. So I found myself in a room full of admirals and generals, last in line as we went around the room for closing comments. After a work-related update, I shared that it would be my last meeting, and I didn't know when the Space Force would have a permanent replacement. The officer next to me smiled and asked, "Oh, what new assignment did you get?" I told him I didn't have a new assignment, just that I didn't meet this administration's standard for military excellence and readiness, which was the title of the executive order that labeled transgender service members as dishonorable, undisciplined liars who lack the humility required for military service. It took a moment for that to sink in. And then, in a scene that mirrored what happened 9 years earlier when I first came out as trans, but this time tinged with the sadness of past tense, a room full of admirals and generals stood up, walked over to me, shook my hand, and said, "It's been an honor to have served with you." I made it to the hallway before the sniffles became a torrent of tears, because it was the honor of a lifetime to serve alongside the people in that room. Because they knew the truth of who I was and what I brought to the fight. And that truth stood in direct conflict with what the policy said about people like me. That's the absurdity that we're living in and you are witnessing today. Not a theoretical debate, a room full of senior leaders saying, "You have been an asset to this nation," while the policy says, "You are the problem, you are unwanted, you are unneeded." Over 23 years, I learned what my grandfather was trying to tell me with that bronze star in his quote about courage. I learned how to change dreams and pivot when life or fate or policy closed a door. From the tiny cut in the back of my eye that ended my hopes of becoming an astronaut, just as I applied to flight test school, to the rare form of cancer that nearly took the uniform from me a few years ago, to the surreal period of living in limbo, wondering when or whether a policy written by people who feared what we represented would finally push us out. Every single time, I was carried forward by love and leadership from my family at home and my family in uniform. But there is one thing I was never taught in my 23 years of service. I don't think anyone in this room was. None of us were ever taught how to surrender. We were taught how to retreat and regroup, how to act under pressure, how to find another way to accomplish our mission. But we were never taught how to quit on our country, our values, or each other. We got knocked down. We got back up. We did our best again tomorrow. A few years ago, when Fred passed, his last words were to me as I squeezed his hand tightly. He was so proud. He told me, keep doing what you're doing. With that charge, there is no way I could ever let him down. It was the courage to keep going. As our time in uniform ends, for now, evidence of that courage is everywhere. The retirees you've heard from today have left an extraordinary record of service. Commands led, lives saved, systems built, units transformed. And what you've heard this afternoon is just the tip of the iceberg for what trans service members have done for this nation. We have blazed trails, sometimes at great personal cost, so that others could follow on solid ground instead of through a minefield of policies that said we were broken or monsters. We step away knowing that we will not be the last, knowing we have proven beyond any honest doubt that we belong. But there's one more thing. Our oaths do not retire when we do. Our oath is not to a uniform, a service, or a particular administration. It is to the Constitution of the United States of America. For every service member, there comes a day when the uniform comes off. For some, it's when they pay the ultimate price. For most, it's when they decide the time is right to move on to a new form of service. We were denied the dignity of choosing that moment. Our uniforms are not coming off because we failed in our duty, but because we did it so well that the blazing starfire of what it represented could not be hidden away. But taking off the uniform is not the same as walking away from the fight. We may be done with our military service, but we are not done serving. So when my mom asked me, what's your plan to flee? I thought about Ludwig and Paula and that midnight train to Paris. I thought about the people who did what they had to do to survive. And I said, Mom, I plan to stay and fight. This is my country too, and I want it to survive. Staying and fighting looks a lot different now. I know my uniform won't protect me, but if the courage it gave me can help me stand and fight for others, it sure did its job. Now, it means showing up in our communities to defend the values we swore to uphold. It means standing with our kids, especially queer and trans kids, so they don't grow up in a country where they have to ask if there's a train or a plane they need to be on before it's too late. America should be a beacon to refugees, not a source of them. Our fight means telling the truth about who we are and what we've done for this nation again and again until the policies catch up to the reality. It means being the quiet voice at the end of a very long day in American democracy, which says, we will do our best again tomorrow. To my wife and our kids, I know this is not the retirement you deserved. You deserve more time, more safety, more certainty than I can promise today. But I also know we share a belief that this country is worth the work, that the freedoms we enjoy are worth defending, that no child should have to wonder whether their country has room for them. Thank you for letting me serve this long, and thank you in advance for standing by me as I trade one uniform for another kind of service. Our combat boots may be at rest, but we are not. We are simply lacing up for a different battlefield, one where the weapons are words, votes, organizing, and relentless hope. One where the mission is to make sure the America my grandparents fled to is not lost on our watch. This is our country too. It has always been our country. It's worth fighting for. And together, we will do our best again tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Bree. Today, we honored the profound depth of service represented on this stage. We witnessed the impact of lives lived with courage, authenticity, and unwavering dedication to the mission and to the people who carried it out. But there comes a moment in every military career when words give way to tradition. The rituals that have marked generations of service members become the language that speaks for us. These traditions are not mere formalities. They are symbols of promises kept, a duty fulfilled, and a legacy secured. They remind us that the nation that these five defended is better because they were here. And so as their time in military service reaches an abrupt end, not of their choosing, we turn to the honors which mark the transition, honors that belong to them because of what their service earned. We begin now with the ceremonial portion of today's program, the sheathing of the sword, the reading of the watch, the presentation of the flags, and the final piping ashore. Each is a tribute to a career of consequence. Each is a reminder that although their active service ends, their impact endures. I'll now ask General Crystal and Sergeant First Class Schmidt to move to the front. In 1840, the War Department adopted the model 1840 non-commissioned officer's sword, a weapon designed for function rather than display. For over 70 years, American sergeants wore it through campaigns of the Mexican-American War, Civil War, and Spanish-American War. The sword embodies the NCO's duty to maintain good order and discipline, as well as to care for soldiers. In ceremony, it stands as a symbol of the power, strength, and enduring fidelity of the NCO Corps. Sergeant Schmidt will now retire her weapon.
Sir, request permission to retire my weapon.
Prepare for inspection.
At this time, Sergeant First Class Schmidt is presenting her weapon for final inspection, signifying the formal relinquishment of her duties and her gratitude for the privilege of service in the profession of arms.
Retire your sword.
Thank you, sir.
I now invite our joint service team to read the watch. Retiring members, please stand.
For over a combined 100 years, these Americans have stood the watch. While some of us were in our bunks at night, they stood the watch.
While some of us were in school learning our trade, they stood the watch. Yes, even before some of us were born into this world, these Americans stood the watch. In those years, when the storm clouds of war were seen brewing on the horizon of history, they stood the watch.
Many times, they would cast an eye home and their family standing there, needing their guidance and help, needing that hand to hold during those hard times. But they still stood the watch.
They stood the watch together. They stood the watch so that we, our families, our fellow countrymen, could sleep soundly in safety each and every night, knowing that these Americans stood the watch.
Today, we are here to say, though not of your choice, your watch stands relieved. Relieved by those who have trained, guided, and led, these Americans stand relieved.
We have the watch.
Side boys, post. Chief Petty Officer Jada McGuire, United States Coast Guard, departing. Sergeant First Class Catherine Schmid, United States Army, departing. Lieutenant Colonel Arian Krizik, United States Air Force, departing. Commander Blake Drummond, United States Navy, departing. Colonel Bree Fram, United States Space Force, departing. Side boys, left, right face. Side boys, post. This concludes today's joint retirement ceremony. On behalf of our retirees, thank you for sharing this moment with them. Please join them for a reception in my right of the room.